So today is part one in a three-part review of the new film by Harman, the Phoenix 200 color film. Now, this film's been out for about 2 months or so, and I've watched a lot of reviews and was kind of waiting for the dust to settle before I jumped in and did my own review. So I purchased a roll of the film, which should be enough to give me a general idea of what I'm looking at. And I did do an extensive deep dive into other reviews, looking at sample images, looking at Harman's tech sheets for the film. So I thought today what we would do is spend just a couple of minutes and go over what we know about this film first. I'm going to talk about the two cameras that I'm going to film, that I'm going to use for this film, for the review, and why I chose them. And then in the next part, I'm going to have the film processed, and I'm going to have it scanned commercially, as well as talk about scanning this film on an Epson V750 Pro, as well as my Ikon 646, and give you some tips and ideas on how to maximize this film. And then in the final, I'll post some examples and give sort of my thoughts on this experimental film. And that's an important thing to remember. This is an experimental film by Harman. This film is probably going to change. I doubt if they're going to keep this particular incarnation, because it is what they refer to as a first attempt. All color films being produced going forward are going to be under the name of Harman and not Ilford. So I have the spec sheet here, which you can download from Ilford's website, and I was reading through it, and the specs on this film remind me a lot of Rollei Crossbird 200 and other Rollei 200 speed films that are now discontinued. High contrast, doesn't have an orange mask. It has some halation issues, and I've saw a lot of sample images where if you have really bright highlights, the highlights can end up glowing. It's not, even by Harman's own admission, a very fine-grained film. It has a fair amount of grain, especially in underexposed images, which is common on negative material. My feeling is, if you've watched Digital Revolution for a long time, I'm going to expose this film the way Mortensen suggested it in my very first post here on Digital Revolution, where I'm going to expose for the highlights and let the shadows fall. It's January in Vermont. We have snow outside. It is a bright sunny day. I'm going to go for a drive today and shoot half a roll of film in the bright sun. Now, you can shoot this film between ISO or EI 100 to 400. Most of the results that I've seen look the best at box speed. Once again, the latitude is extremely narrow. I'm also going to be using this camera with some pinhole work. So I was looking at Harman's recommendation for long exposure. It's pretty standard Ilford talk. Basically double the time. So if you have 2 seconds, make it 4, 5 seconds, make it 10. That seems to be pretty realistic. But once again, with a narrow latitude film, I'll be curious to see how that turns out. Processing everything is your standard C41. Once again, as I said, it has no orange mask on the film. That will be interesting to see how the commercial lab does regarding the scanning. Everybody recommends shooting this film in good light. People talk about how in poor light, it has sort of a murkier quality. In that aspect, I'm sort of already in tune with that because I'm shooting so much Polaroid film right now, and Polaroid film looks better with lots of light as well. But once again, this is an experimental film. What did Harman say here? I kind of like this. Making color film is very different from black and white. Yeah. And we recognize that they have a lot to learn. Please embrace this film for all of its quirks. And that's going to be definitely what I'm expecting to see. So the two cameras that I chose to use for this film are very interesting cameras. The first one, I'm going to use the Alfie Camera that I've done extensive reviews here on Digital Revolution. This is just a fun half-frame camera. If you've not seen the 3 or 4 part review I did of this camera, check it out. It's super cool. And what I like is this camera has a meniscus lens, it has a more complex lens, it has a pinhole, and it has a zone plate all in one camera. And we're going to set this to 200 and just shoot and see how each of those different type of imaging lenses affect the film. And I'm really interested to see what happens with the zone plate and the pinhole in particular with this particular camera. So that'd be great. That'd be half a roll of film. And on the other half of film, I'm going to use my beloved Zeiss Ikon Hologon camera. There were only 1,400 of these cameras really ever produced. If you're not familiar with the Hologon, In my opinion, this is one of the best wide-angle 35mm cameras ever created. It has a fixed 15mm lens that has only 3 elements. It's considered by many people to be the sharpest and best corrected 35mm wide-angle lens from the film era. It was made between 69 and 75, once again, 1,400 models made. There's not that many in perfect functioning order like mine is. The lens is, as I said, it's a fixed focus f8, it's always f8, and the focus is set to somewhere around 4.5 feet. And as a result, the depth of field on this lens, being a 15mm at f8, is incredible. Everything from 20 inches to infinity is in focus. And there is literally no distortion. If you keep the camera perfectly level, notice how I have to keep my hands out of the frame, because out of the front of the camera, otherwise they will show up. The distortion is so minimal. It reminds me like of a 35mm of a Hasselblad super wide. Once again, an amazing lens. And this is sort of the 35mm equivalent to that. So what I'm gonna do is load it up first in the Hologon camera today. I'm gonna go out, shoot half a roll of film, and then I'm gonna rewind the film, because I only have 1 roll, because I'm cheap, I only bought 1 roll, and then reload the film, advance it to halfway through on the Alfie camera, and then I'll shoot the other half over the next couple of days while I'm traveling. And my hope is to have part 2 here by the end of the week. So stay tuned. Once again, part 1 looking at the Harman Phoenix 200 speed film. Thank you very much for listening. Now go shoot some film.